Welcome to Straight from the Horse's Mouth radio show. I'm Paula Slater, your host. This is an interview-based podcast where I have conversations with some of the most creative and interesting people in the horse world. All right, today I'd like to welcome Bonnie Marlewski-Probert from Whitehall Publishing. Welcome, Bonnie, to Straight from the Horse's Mouth radio show.
Thanks, Paula.
So, tell me about your business. You do write books about basically a horse line of chicken soup for the soul, but horse soup for the soul. Or something like that idea.
Yeah. Our series is called Horse Tales for the Soul, and that actually originated after I had written for about 10 years 2 syndicated columns for the horse industry across North America. And after writing a column about one of my school horses who we named Leo, right, our barn was filled with fancy schmancy horses and fancy schmancy names like Frank and Leo. Anyway, I wrote a column about Leo and said that he was such a fine fellow that if he were a man, he's the guy you would drink beer with on a Friday night after work.
Awesome.
Right? His character was that good. And in the column, I told the short story about this horse. And I had a little girl on his back, and she was trotting around the arena in the indoor. And as she came to the turn, she pulled the wrong rein. So she was heading in the wrong direction, and this horse knew it. And he knew that if he did what she asked, she was going to fall off. So instead of doing what she asked, I watched him slow himself down, keep in a straight line, and literally come to a stop as his nose bumped the wall. And then her little butt went right back into the saddle, and she giggled and basically said, he didn't do what I asked him to do. and so I'm looking at this horse and thinking, you are the finest animal on the planet, bar none. Anyway, so I wrote this column, and I said of this horse that if he were a guy, you would drink beer with him on a Friday night after work. And I started to get letters from readers who said, I have a story. I never told anybody this story, but when I read your column, I knew you'd understand my story. And the letters, these were handwritten letters from adults that came in through the post. And one of them was about a father who had an estranged teenager, like every father does. You know, I mean, the teenage years where you know, they hate their parents and whatever. Yep. And they had a maiden mare in their backyard. It was her first breeding, the mare's first breeding. And so the father said to his teenage daughter, you and I are going to sleep in the hayloft, what we call the hayloft. And we're going to keep an eye on this mare because it's the first time she's ever been bred. And we're going to be in that barn until she gives birth to this baby, no matter how many nights it takes. Well, there were no cell phones. There were no iPads. It was just her and him sitting in the hayloft. No radios, no TVs, nothing. And for several nights in a row, they had no choice but to get to know each other. And they not only got to know each other, but they bonded as father and daughter. And they were both there when the mare gave birth. And they were the first 2 human beings at 4 a.m. to touch that baby. Right? And I thought, oh, my God, that is an amazing story. And it's not even about horses, right? I mean, the horse thing was there, but it was really more about how do you connect with your children? How, if you just took the time to spend with your kids, what could happen? You know, what positive parenting things could happen? The bond that was now formed between that father and daughter is something that will be there until they're both 90. You know, I mean, a really powerful moment. They just happened to share it in a horse barn together. So when I saw that story, and then there were other ones that came in, I thought, somebody needs to tell these stories. So that was the birth of the Horse Tales for the Soul books. My intention was to do 1 book, and then we were going to go do a dog book. That was the plan. And now we are on book 7. And then we did audiobooks for all of them. And because I'm crazy, I suggested that the authors read their own stories.
And how did that go?
It took about 4 months out of my life. I never intended to do the audiobooks. And let me just say that, you know, one of the messages that I always share with people when I'm doing speaking engagements is if you're willing to get out of the way of ideas and opportunities, amazing things can happen. You know, if you just allow yourself to not be pigeonholed in and stay open to opportunities, wonderful, magical things can happen. And so in this particular case, I was doing a book signing in Boston. And I'm not kidding, a blind 21-year-old came up to the table with her parents. And she was riding with the Therapeutic Riding Center in Boston. And she asked, are the books available on audio? And she's blind. And I'm looking at this woman thinking, I am an idiot. So I said, her name is Lauren. And I said, Lauren, if you could see, you would realize you're looking at an idiot, because it never crossed my mind to do audio books. So obviously for Lauren, it was essential. So I said to Lauren, but, something about me you need to know. I'm a businesswoman first and last. And if you give me a good idea, I'm not an idiot. I'm going to go home and make this happen. And when I do, I'm sending you the first set of books. So my intention on the way home was that we would hire on-air talent to do the taping. Mm-hmm. And then when I got home from the book tour, I was out on the book tour for about a month. When I got home, there was an email waiting for me from one of the older authors in the series who said, her name is Debbie Granger, and she said, I just wanted to thank you for publishing my 2 stories in the book, because I wanted to leave something behind for the grandchildren I don't have yet. Mm-hmm. And I wanted them to know 2 things. I wanted them to know that their grandmother had spunk and that they came from good stock. And I thought, oh, no, I can't hire a stranger to read those stories. It's got to be Deb. So that started the process of the next 3 or 4 months of my life doing audio tapings for authors from as far away as New Zealand and Australia and England and Canada and the United States. Mm-hmm. And then and as you know, doing audio, then the whole editing process starts.
Right.
So it was, if somebody had told me before I did this what would be involved, I would have still done it. But I would have stepped back a moment before I jumped.
Yes.
Yeah, but the good news was that it turned out great, and the authors, Debbie Granger's grandchildren that she doesn't have yet will know their grandmother's voice, and they will know the courageous, fun things that she did. And all of the people in those books have that to hang on to forever. That's something that they will have forever, and that's really powerful. And so that's how the Horse Tales for the Soul books got started.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very special gift that author gave to her children and grandchildren, because it's following along the storytelling audio, storytelling line, which is a tradition in most cultures. And, to be able to preserve that sound of the voice, especially after someone has gone, is a wonderful thing.
It's a powerful, powerful thing. And we have lost a few Horse Tales authors who came into the series in their 80s or 90s. Mm-hmm. And their voices are on those tapes.
That's great.
Yeah, which is really powerful. And in some cases, when we did the tapings, some of those stories were so close to their hearts that we read them backwards. We literally went backwards. Last paragraph first paragraph last.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, that's a nightmare in the editing booth. But but the alternative was the 2 of us would be there weeping.
Yes.
And not all of this. I mean, the stories that they got stuck on were not stories about death or loss. They were sweet stories like the dad in the hayloft with his daughter.
Oh, yes.
They were fabulously wonderful, heartwarming stories that you just go, oh. Yeah, so I was proud to be a part of that, and it was never my intention to do 7 books, of course. But once we sent out the press to invite people to send in their stories on book 1, it just took off. And I thought, and as those stories came in and book 1 was closed, and the stories kept coming, I thought, I can't send these back. They're too fabulous. People need to see these stories. They're too fabulous. So what we did instead was we started to donate money from the sales to therapeutic riding centers. As sort of to balance things, right? Because from a business standpoint, after you do the first book, it's sort of redundant to do 7. I mean, from a logistical standpoint. Mm-hmm. So I wanted it to be, and let me just say, every story in every one of those books is powerful and meaningful and will touch your heart. No question about it. But as a business owner, I'm always looking on the next thing. What's the next thing? What's the next opportunity? So for me to make this as valuable as I could, I wanted to donate money to therapeutic riding centers. We ultimately set up what's called an affiliate account. So therapeutic riding centers and dog and cat shelters across the country can tap into that free program, and they get 35% of every sale that's made. And so it's the gift that keeps on giving. Mm-hmm. And it's a powerful thing, and I'm just happy to have been smart enough to get out of the way and let it evolve into what it became.
Mm-hmm. Now, that's wonderful, and you have that series of books on the website, but you also do other things. You are supporting, or not supporting, but encouraging and coaching authors.
Yes. Interestingly enough, we have always owned a traditional publishing house. For 20 years, I have owned a traditional book publishing house. And by traditional, I mean you scout your authors, you sign your authors. The publishing house keeps 90 to 95% of the take, which is traditional in publishing. And the publisher covers the expenses. But when we did the Horse Tales books, after the first one was published, I had several authors in those books come to me and say, I have a book that I've written, and I don't know what to do with it. And I thought, I can't send you out into the world of traditional publishers because they'll eat you up. So I thought, well, we have all these professionals that work for me who can bring all the skills to the table to crank out an award-winning world-class product. And if we just did this on a work-for-hire basis, the authors would own all the profits. They would just pay us for our time on a flat fee basis, and then they would own the book, and they would own all the profits from the book, and they could do with it anything they wanted after that. And then they would avoid the sinkhole that can be traditional publishing, where the publisher owns your book, which means if they don't like the title, they change it. If they don't like the way you wrote it, they can change it. So I knew that was the path that these folks were going to be on if they went that way. And I thought, oh, no, we can't do that. So we started what we have come to call Whitehall Publishing, which is the imprint for our home company. And that's been around for about 10, 15 years now.
Mm-hmm. And you also, you do more than just, help them get through the publishing of their book. You also help them market and you coach them as well,
right.
Correct?
Right. I think it's really important that an author in today's world understands the marketing side of publishing, because on average there's a minimum of 175,000 new titles published a year. And according to the PMA, Publishers Marketing Association, the average book in the United States in its entire lifespan will not sell more than 500 copies. Which is ludicrous. But there's a reason why that's the case. And the reason is that most authors have two, what I call, disabilities. One is they don't know how to market, and two is if they did, they don't want to.
Which is very similar to, you can probably put the umbrella of artist over top of that.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and so part of what we do at Whitehall Publishing is, in addition to doing the editing and the cover design and the layout and all of those other things and helping the author tell their story in an effective way, in addition to all of that, we also say to them, you have unlimited access to us from the day that you sign contracts until the day the book is delivered to you, which is, generally speaking, for a new author, about 6 months. And we will help you learn how to set up book signings and how to use social media and how to build your website. Every piece of that marketing pie that you need to understand and how to do will help you learn how to do that. And then you can set all that stuff up while we're publishing the book with you so that you're ready to actually launch effectively once that book is done. Now, for those authors who want to get after it, as I say, there's no limit as to how much money they can make. For those authors on the opposite end of the spectrum who want nothing to do with the business side, okay, you know what you need to do. What you choose to do is up to you. You have to respect that. Some people just don't want to do it, and that's okay. But at least they own the outcome, and they know it. The minute they decide that they want to step up and go after it, they know exactly how to do it.
Right.
And let me just say that 99% of the things that we suggest to them cost them nothing to do. So this isn't like I'm asking them to spend $10,000 a month for ad space. I'm not asking them to spend 10 cents. It's free. All the things that we teach them to do are free to them to use if they choose to.
Can you give us some examples of that?
Sure, absolutely. Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, free, right? You can do campaigns on all of those for free. Sending out press releases to every media outlet across the planet in your target market. So let's say you're doing a book on gardening. It's easy enough to go out to specific websites at free cost to you to pull the media list of all the gardening magazines on the planet if you choose to, regional and national. And then get the email addresses for all of those editors. And then you get the writers' guidelines so that you know what they're buying if you want to sell articles to them in which you will promote your book. Or you send press releases out to all of them, again, at no cost to you. You type up the press release on your computer, you set them up in your email program, you hit the send button, they're out there. If a magazine has a readership of 50,000 people and they run your press release, which is free for you, then you just knocked on the doors of 50,000 potential customers. That's powerful business. My suggestion is that authors should be doing that every month. Sending out press releases to their target market media outlets every month. And the trick to getting that kind of ink, as we call it, is it has to be timely. It has to be of interest to their demographic, their readership. And it has to be something that ties in with the message of their magazine. So timely means don't try to promote a book that you wrote 20 years ago, right? It's no longer news. Of interest to their demographic would be don't try to sell them an article about building a log cabin if it's a gardening magazine. I mean, it's going to take you a big stretch to find that, to find a way to make that interesting to gardeners. So as long as you can keep it timely and you can keep it of interest to their readership, your chances of getting free ink are really high. And the more you do it, the more established you become with those editors so that they get used to seeing you coming through the office, your work coming through the office. So part of building the relationship with these magazines or e-zines, you can certainly do it on the internet as well, is to establish yourself as a regular contributor to these publications. What I always say to authors is the only person more afraid of you getting published in a magazine is the editor of the magazine. Because if it turns out that you're dangerous, a knucklehead, crazy person, they're going to lose their job. So you need to help them realize that you are sound and responsible and you know what you're doing. And you do that by sending them press releases every week, every month, depending upon how often that publication is printed. The same is true with TV and radio in your geographical area. So all of those things are free. The other tip that I share with authors is if you're going to do a book signing, do it anywhere but in a bookstore, which of course sounds counterintuitive. But if you do it in a bookstore, the books are purchased through a distributor who is now taking 55 to 70% of the retail price of the book to get it into the bookstore. So by the time you cover your overhead and the distributor takes their big piece of the pie, any book you sell at that bookstore is not going to make you any money. That's what I call doing charity work. So what I say to people is, don't do it at the bookstore. Do it at the store right next door to the bookstore. And then if you really feel compelled to give away some of your profit, make a donation to a local charity. Right? So even if you made a 30% donation on all the sales of the books to your favorite charity in town, you're still 30% ahead than you would have been, or 40% ahead than you would have been if you walked over to the bookstore and did it there, and the distributor took 55 to 70%. So in publishing today is very different than it was even 10 years ago.
Absolutely. Wow.
And so one of the things we really want to stress to our authors is if you are educated about the environment today, you are empowered. If you are empowered, you have the potential to make a lot of money. And ultimately, from a business side, that's the goal. I mean, we are assuming here that your book is fabulous, that your story is fabulous, and that the product looks fabulous. That's a given. Now, from a business side, for the hundreds of hours it took you to write that book, for the hundreds of months of your life that it took you to live whatever life you had to live to get to the place where you could write that book, you need to get paid well for that. And you do that by being educated first about the marketing, executing in ways that don't cost you anything to do, and now you're empowered to leverage that to a very good income.
Excellent advice.
Thank you.
Yes, I think that, many authors are coming from the past. I mean, much has changed in publishing over the last 5 years and 10 years. And, we see the closing of the brick and mortar bookstores, and, it's overwhelming. And then, of course, the advent of the ebooks, and, everyone's sort of writing an ebook. But, again, people still recognize quality. And if they have something of value, then they need to get it out there properly. But again, it's like artists. Artists with the umbrella of artists, they want to create the art, and they have the energy for that. But to get it out there is a different ball game altogether.
It's a different set of skills that are required to do that. It's left brain, right brain stuff.
Yes.
But specifically in the case of the artists, what I say to artists, because we've done several books with probably 200 plus artists in them, what I say to them is, part of the reason why people invest in art is because they expect it to appreciate in value over time. If you don't do your job as a business owner, I don't care if it's the greatest piece of art in the world, it's not going to appreciate in value. So now those customers who have paid their hard-earned money because they believed in your talent are getting cheated by you as an artist because you're not taking care of them. And part of your responsibility is to promote your art so that it continues to escalate in value as the years go by. And that's not going to happen. Nobody's going to do that for you. You need to go do that for you so that you protect those customers who believed in you enough to pay for that art.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good way of waking people up.
Hopefully. And, there's still artists out there, who aren't going to get it. But then, that's true of everybody. And let me just say that while there are 175,000 new titles a year coming out, of those 175,000, I'm going to guess 10% of those authors are going after it, meaning they're producing world-class product. They're empowered by education in marketing, and they're pursuing it. So while on the first blush, it looks like, oh my God, how could I as an author compete in this marketplace? The good news is it's not hard because there's lots of art authors who will sit on the bench and say, okay, I wrote my book, I published my book, here's my book. And literally, I'm not kidding you, about 6 months ago, I got a note from an author who said she published her first book the year before. She did it herself, quote unquote, self-published. And as of that date, she had not sold one copy, which is pretty sad. I mean, your mom would buy at least one, So, but interestingly enough, we have, against my better judgment, we have, to help authors, accepted just editing jobs, right? We would prefer to take a book from concept to completion because then we have an empowered, educated author when we're done, and we know it's a world-class product when it's over with. But occasionally we'll have an author who comes and says, my book's already done, my cover's already designed, I just need you to give it an edit. The last time we did that, it was a 400-page book, and within the first hour and a half, we had literally found, and I'm not kidding, 10,000 mistakes in the book. Literally. And they were simple mistakes like 2 spaces after a period when there should only have been 1 in current publishing, quote marks in the wrong place, commas in the wrong, really basic 4th grade kind of stuff that if you're writing the book yourself and you're editing the book yourself, you're not going to see that. And I say that I would be just as guilty of that. If I write the book and I edit the book myself, I'm going to miss what we call the 800-pound gorilla on the page.
Right.
Because I've seen it too many times. My brain's not going to notice it anymore. So it's imperative that you get somebody from the outside to vet the work. And not just from the standpoint of grammar and syntax, but from the standpoint of the storyline. Does it make sense? Would those characters do that? That's one of the first things that we do when we take on an author. We do what we call a pre-market review of the book. So we read it from cover to cover, pre-market, and we ask them up front, who's your target audience? Who is the person that's going to buy this book? Are they a 6-year-old child? Are they a 45-year-old housewife? Are they a scientist, working for NASA? Who are these people? Be specific. And then when we read the book, every word that is read has to pass that vetting test. Is this a book that would meet that demographic? If not, we need to fix it. Right? Because there's no point in writing a book for a scientist and then trying to sell it to a 6-year-old audience. It's not going to fly. Mm-hmm. Right? And vice versa, the same thing. You don't want to insult a scientist by giving them a book that's written with the, language of a 6-year-old. It's insulting to the audience. So you really want, and most authors, I will tell you, most authors never even ask themselves that question. Who are you writing this book for? They don't ask the question. Because what it comes out to be is they're writing the book for themselves.
Right, yes.
Well, there's only one of them on the planet, which is why the woman who I told you about hadn't sold a single book. Mm-hmm. Because she wrote it for herself, and she already had the book. There was no need to buy it. She already owned it. So it's important that you understand that as an author, you are a servant to your audience. It is your job to be the storyteller that will touch the hearts of your audience. Well, you can't do that unless you know who your audience is up front. You are now serving them. So, for a lot of artists and authors, that's a hard pill to swallow.
It is, yes. Because, I know with the visual arts, people are doing it basically for themselves. They're not thinking about communicating a message as much as that maybe an author would be. They're just taking a moment, like a photograph, taking a moment and trying to capture it or, translate it through their eyes onto paper or canvas or clay.
And there's room for that, and I totally respect that. And if that's the goal of the author or the artist, I don't have a problem with that. Just know that going in, you're not going to sell a lot of product.
Right.
And that's okay. I have worked with 2 authors in my lifetime who said right up front, I don't care if I ever sell any books. Mm-hmm. I've just always wanted to tell this story and write this story. And so for me, it's hard because it is my knee-jerk reaction to say, there's clubs out there that would love this book. I'm constantly thinking, how can I help you sell this book? That's just sort of in my bones, because if it's a great story, I want people to see it. I want people to see it. I want people to appreciate it. But if you have an author who says, I'm not interested in selling books, I think, that's just like clipping my wings.
Mm-hmm. And I think, again, with writing, when people do approach you, they are thinking, now I want to share this, or at least, they can print it basically off their computer if they just want it hard copy. But again, I think if you're approaching a publisher, then you must have the intent of sharing that work.
Hopefully that's the case. I think 10 years ago, authors thought if I could just get a book deal,
yes,
they would take care of all that dirty work business, as most authors think of it, dirty work marketing, and I will just be allowed to sit at home, drink tea, eat bonbons, and write to my heart's content. Right?
That's what they do in the movies.
You betcha, yeah. Bad boys in the movies who started that bad rumor, right? So, But here's the thing, though. What most authors and artists don't understand is if you get face-to-face with the people who love what you do, that's an amazingly powerful opportunity for both sides. If you are one of those people who sits at home and just wants to write or just wants to create the art and doesn't want to have anything to do with the people, you cheat yourself and you cheat them. Because part of the power of the experience of writing or doing art is that connection with your audience. And today, via social media, you can do that from the comfort of your home. But there's just no getting around the power of being face-to-face with those people who love what you do. It's really powerful. It is as powerful, as far as I'm concerned, as the process of writing or the process of creating the art. So you cheat yourself if you don't take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, well, again, I've talked to authors who were afraid, to bring their work out or to show it to anyone. And that's pretty common, isn't it, in writing?
Absolutely common. And but here's the interesting thing. Mm-hmm. If you use the methodology that I suggest, which is before you put pen to paper, you ask yourself, who am I writing this book for? And you target that market. It's the same story, right? It's, the story is yours. It's coming from your heart, whatever the story is. You're just writing it to a specific market. So I'll give you an example. If you just said, I'm going to write a story about two friends who go horseback riding together. And now I want to write that for 6-year-old children. Story's the same, but the way you present the story is completely different than if I said, I'm going to do it for husbands and wives. Story about two people who go out horseback riding together, grown-ups in the woods. The presentation is completely different. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you target that market up front and you understand that you are serving that market, the fear thing is not as great. When I do public speaking events, and have done for 20 years, what I do when I get ready to do that, right? Because they say statistically that the scariest thing people can do is speak in public. And I will wholeheartedly agree with them on that if you don't understand how this works. If you understand how it works, which goes back to what I always just say about education and empowering people, when I do a speaking engagement, this is what I know to be true. I am a good-looking UPS man. Right? That's what I think about as myself. When I go up on those stages, I think, you are a good-looking UPS man. That's your job. You are the delivery man. Right? So my job, and I don't work for UPS, of course, but my job is to deliver something that will educate and empower that audience. That's my job. If I do that well, if I stay focused on who are these people I'm going to be speaking to and target my message to educate and empower them, there's no reason to be afraid because it's not about me now. It's about them. So my joke always is to other speakers, I could get up there buck naked as a jaybird and whistle Dixie and nobody would even notice as long as I deliver the goods. They wouldn't care. They don't care if I weigh 5,000 pounds or I'm a, 3-foot tall person or I've got 6 arms. They don't care. All they care about is when they leave that room, are they better than when they walked in that room?
Excellent.
Right? Stay focused on that, and there's no reason to be afraid. Mm-hmm. You become the guy who did the homework for them. You become the guy who did the research for them. You become the guy who delivers the package. And then, so for some people who have a big ego, you would go, yeah, but it should be about me. Well, then be afraid. Be very afraid. And you better look fabulous when you get there because that's all you're going to have to go with.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was blessed. I was born of Polish and Irish descent, which makes me one of those dolls, the Weebles. Have you ever seen those?
No.
They're the little dolls that if you push them over, they roll right back up again.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. That's what they call Weebles. So anyway, so I am built like a Weeble. So if I were somebody who said, it's all about me, you'd never see me get on a stage. Because I am not tall. I am not thin. I don't look like a movie star. So anybody in their right mind would go, oh, hell no, I'm not doing this. But if you go in with the understanding that you are the UPS man and your job is to deliver, and I can tell you this from personal experience, I swear to you, nobody cares what you look like or what you sound like as long as you deliver the goods. And there are times when, I swear to you, I get off that stage and people don't even remember what my name was, but by God, their life is better than it was when they walked in the door. Okay. And they know it. Yeah. And they know that for the rest of their life, it will be better. That's my job.
Wow.
So I don't care if they don't remember my name, and I don't care if they don't even think about, if somebody asked them after a talk, what was she wearing? I swear to you, 90% of the people in the room wouldn't know because they were so focused on themselves, which is the goal of the exercise, ultimately, if you're going to be up there. And as an author, in my world, that's the goal of the exercise as well. If you focus on your target demographic audience and you serve them, there's no reason to be afraid. I will say, though, that authors who do these critique groups in their writers' clubs, I'm sure you've heard of those.
Mm-hmm. Well, just talk about it a little bit because, again, our audience isn't all about writing or authors. So just maybe explain that. That would be good.
Okay. So there are writers' clubs across the planet where writers get together and they share each other's work and they, let each other do like readings of their work and then the group critiques it. So what I've always said to our authors is, unless they're writing you a check, I don't need their critique. Because it's a very personal thing. The process of writing is a very personal thing. And if those people are not the demographic you're targeting, don't ask their opinion. I mean, it's like, you know what it's like? It's like, you know that book that just came out, 50 Shades of Grey?
Mm-hmm.
If you asked a group of Southern Baptists or nuns to review that book, it wouldn't go so well. Right?
Right.
I mean, if that author was crazy enough to go to a writer's group where it was critiqued by Southern Baptist women and nuns, that book would never have happened.
Right.
Right? Because her audience is not those folks. So that doesn't mean that those folks are bad. It means the author picked the wrong critique group. That's the fault of the author, not the critique. So what I always say to authors is do not have a writer's group critique your work unless and until they are your exact demographic, in which case, if they are, you want their critique. If they are not, if you're writing a book of romance for women, don't ask 50 and 60-year-old men to critique it in your writer's group. They're not qualified. And I'm not suggesting that's because they're not educated. I'm suggesting because they're not women. They're not your demographic. So target your demographic, and then if those folks don't like it, pay attention. But otherwise, don't ask people who aren't qualified. It never has a good outcome.
Well, I think this is amazing advice for marketing. I think it can be applied to all walks of life or all careers, and I think that you've shared some valuable information and lessons, Bonnie, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks. I started in the horse industry because I was a horse lover, and I was fortunate as a child that the mentors who came into my life from outside of my family were horsemen. That's how I got into horses. Had they been scuba divers, I'd be a scuba diver. But they had such a powerful impact on my life that everything I've done since then is about paying it forward. So our website, horsetales4thesoul.com, every book on that website can be used in the affiliate program for nonprofits across the country. And the Dogtail, we just released Dog Tales for the Funny Bone, which is filled with funny, true stories for dog lovers.
Yeah.
Thanks, yeah. And before that, we did a Horse Tales for the Funny Bone, which was essentially the same model. But 35% of all of those sales through the affiliate program go straight to the nonprofit in the affiliate program. So it is a pay it forward opportunity. And once we got the framework built, because it took us a while to find an affiliate program that really worked, once we got that set up, now in the United States there are about 10,000 dog and cat shelters or rescues. So my personal goal is to get every one of those guys tapping into this affiliate program.
Excellent.
And with therapeutic riding centers and hippotherapy association centers, there are over 1,000 of those in the United States alone, all of whom could use that affiliate program as a secondary income stream to supplement the other income that they make during the course of the month with their either paid clients or through donations, whatever. So the work that they do is so powerful that whether it's the dog shelter or whether it's the therapeutic riding center, I want to make it as easy as I can for them to live as easy as they can financially, which is why we just did the speaking engagement at the American Hippotherapy Association conference in Fort Worth this past weekend. The whole goal of that was to honor the work that these folks do and provide them with that left brain, right brain skill set that they don't have, to explain to them how they could fundraise effectively without feeling embarrassed about doing it.
Excellent. All right. Well, Bonnie, if you could give us your URL for your website so that these associations, if they've been listening or if you know of an association that could use a little motivation, just so that they can contact you.
Great. If the Horse Tales, Tales spelled Tales, forthesoul.com, is where you'll see all of our books, all of our products. And at the top of that page, you'll see a link that says Become an Affiliate. click on that and it'll walk you through the process. It's a free program. If you are a nonprofit and you need help, go to our website called funding101.org. We have a new program out called Making Profits for Your Nonprofit, which is what I affectionately call fundraising for idiots. It's sort of the step-by-step. It ain't this hard. The work you do in the arena, the work you do at the dog shelter, that's hard work. Understanding how to fundraise effectively is not hard work when somebody lays it out for you in a simple format, and that's what that program's about. So it has a 90-plus page workbook. It also has 3 hours of audio files, and then there's a free phone consultation that I did with Autumn O'Hara on the East Coast, who runs a therapeutic riding center, and we literally walked about a 45-minute phone call focused on her organization and, dozens and dozens of things she could do that wouldn't cost her a dime, that would increase her exposure in the community, get her more volunteers, get her more donors, get her more business sponsors and whatever. And interestingly enough, when I was in Fort Worth over the weekend, Autumn was at the conference. I had no idea she was going to be there. So after one of my talks, she came up, introduced herself because we had just spoken on the phone, and said that they were doing gangbusters, that they're growing by leaps and bounds. And I went out to see her Facebook page, and they're hosting a donor appreciation day at the facility, which is genius, which is really sort of the cornerstone of the Making Profits for Your Nonprofit program. Oddly enough, the cornerstone of that program is demonstrate gratitude. Which is really, and so the idea that if you want a business owner to give you $5,000, you better be prepared to demonstrate gratitude in a big way.
Right. Yes.
And not because it's good business, but because it's good manners.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, you don't have to be a business whiz kid to figure that one out. That's just good manners and, showing appreciation for somebody who gave up a lot for you. So once people get into that mindset and they get out of that mindset of poor, pitiful us, we're a nonprofit, we don't have anything. When you get past that mindset and you start to focus on the other guy, which coincidentally is the same methodology I suggest to authors, focus on your audience. Same thing for speakers, focus on your audience. Stop focusing on yourself, focus on them. If you do that, it gets a whole lot easier. And the fear is gone.
Right. Excellent. Right? Excellent. Super advice.
Thank you. I'm so glad we had a chance to do this today.
Yes. And I want to thank you, Bonnie. And is there any other thing that you want to add in terms of contacts or people getting in touch with you?
Well, I appreciate that. If anybody of your listeners is a writer, W-R-I-T-E-R, as opposed to a horseman, and has a book in them that they want to publish, visit our website at whitehallpublishing.com. We do consulting if you just want to talk to somebody on the phone about the process. We can take you from concept to completion. If you want to sell your book internationally, we can hook you up with that. And we will give you the full education in the publishing industry from start to finish, from nuts to soup, as they say, so that by the time you finish your first book with us, if you choose to self-publish, you'll have all the tools you need to do that. But let me just say, we have authors who are on their 10th and 11th books with us.
Wow.
I think they just like to have a wingman.
Well, and what you're doing is you're encouraging the creatives in this world, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's powerful work in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad to be a part of it. And the lessons that we teach our authors were hard earned and hard learned by me. So anytime I can share with somebody else and help them avoid those sinkholes, I'm excited about that because I know how painful those sinkholes are.
Yes. Well, I'm grateful, Bonnie. I really am. So
Thanks.
Thank you so much, and we'll say goodbye.
Thanks again.
I hope you enjoyed my interview today with Bonnie Marlewski-Probert. If there's anyone that has more energy than Bonnie, I'd like to meet them. If you have a story that you want to share with the world, do you love writing and want to take it to the next level by publishing your books? Do you want to maintain creative control of your books throughout the publishing process?
Do you want your book to be treated with the same care and respect you gave it when you wrote it? If you've answered yes to any of these questions, then you need to click over to whitehallpublishing.com and talk to Bonnie. Get in touch with Bonnie, and she will help you achieve your goal. This is Paula Slater signing off for Straight from the Horse's Mouth radio show. We'll see you next time.